Have you ever felt the sting of your own words being used against you, words you never actually said? You express yourself clearly, calmly, only to find your message distorted into something toxic, something outrageous. You tried to clarify, explain, defend, but somehow, the more you speak, the guiltier you look. Sound familiar? It's maddening, isn't it? You say something completely reasonable, with pure intentions. Yet somehow, someone takes your words, twists them into something you never meant, and throws them back at you like a weapon. Suddenly, you're under fire for something you didn't even say. You try to defend yourself. You say, "That's not what I meant," or "You're misinterpreting my words." But here's the catch: the more you explain, the deeper you sink. Every sentence you utter feels like quicksand, pulling you further into a trap you didn't create. This isn't just frustrating, it's psychological warfare. And it's used deliberately by people who want to control the conversation, tilt the narrative, and win arguments through manipulation, not truth. Their goal isn't to understand you, it's to disarm you, to shake your confidence and push you into a defensive position. But here's the cold truth: the moment you begin defending yourself against something you never actually said, you've already lost. You've stepped into their game, and they're the ones controlling the rules. So today, I'm going to show you how to flip the script. I'll teach you how to recognize this tactic instantly, stop it in its tracks, and take back control of the conversation without ever needing to defend something you never said. And by the way, if you enjoy deep, thought-provoking insights on Stoicism, self-mastery, and navigating the complexities of life with clarity and power, you'll love my free daily newsletter. Every day, I share bold lessons, practical strategies, and eye-opening truths to help you grow stronger, wiser, and more grounded. You can sign up using the link below. It's 100% free and packed with value. Why do people twist your words? Because they know they don't need to prove you wrong, they just need to make you look bad. That alone is enough to gain the upper hand. By misrepresenting what you said, they force you into a defensive posture. And in that moment, you look uncertain, reactive, maybe even guilty, while they appear calm, reasonable, and in control. They want you to react, to get flustered, to lose your composure. And the moment you show even the slightest emotional response, frustration, anger, confusion, they jump on it and say, "See, look how defensive you're getting." Now, suddenly, you're not just defending your words, you're defending your emotions. But that's not the end goal. Their real aim is to control the narrative. If they can redefine your words, they can shift the conversation away from facts and into their version of events. A version where you're the problem. I learned this the hard way. Years ago, I had a disagreement with a coworker during a routine project discussion. I said something simple: "I think we should consider another approach." That's it. A completely harmless suggestion. But later, I overheard her telling others that I said her idea was stupid, that she didn't know what she was doing. That wasn't a misunderstanding, it was a lie. A full-blown distortion of the truth. At first, I was furious. I wanted to call her out, correct the story, clear my name. But then it hit me: if I fight her version of the story, I'm validating it. I'm giving it power, I'm stepping right into her narrative. And that's when I learned something even more important. In this world, truth is fragile, especially when it isn't written down. We live in an era where people rewrite reality in real time if it suits their agenda. If then you rely on memory alone, you're playing a losing game. Because here's the harsh truth: if it isn't documented, it didn't happen. Sure, some may say keeping records is excessive, even paranoid. But ask anyone who's ever been misquoted, accused of something they didn't say, or manipulated. They'll tell you the same thing: proof is your only shield. And MCC Hun. Manipulators thrive on ambiguity. They exploit the fact that you won't have evidence to push back. And that's why documentation, texts, emails, or voice recordings where legally allowed becomes your most powerful defense. I've seen this in action. Another time, I worked with someone who constantly shifted the story. Conversations would vanish into thin air. Agreements made verbally would never have happened, until I started documenting everything. Suddenly, the game stopped. Because once you bring in cold, written truth, you take away their greatest weapon, the ability to gaslight you. One day, after giving a coworker specific instructions over the phone, she later flat out denied that I had ever told her anything. Just like that, rewriting the conversation as if it had never happened. That was the breaking point for me. From that moment on, I made a new rule for myself. Always follow up verbal conversations with written confirmation. Whether it was a phone call, a face-to-face chat, or even a casual exchange, I started sending follow-up emails. Not long after, she tried to pull the same trick again. This time, I simply forwarded the email where she had confirmed my instructions. Her game ended right there. She never tried it again. Your digital paper trail is your modern-day witness. You don't need dramatic proof or court-level evidence. Sometimes, a simple text message can save you hours or even days of arguments. An email chain can prevent you from being blamed for something you didn't do. Even jotting down a few notes after an important conversation can give you a record when people later try to rewrite the past. So what can you actually do to protect yourself? Follow up in writing. After any important conversation, send a short recap. It can be as simple as, just to confirm, we agreed that you'll handle task X, and I'll handle task Y, correct? That tiny message can shut down future manipulation before it even starts. Record where legal. In many places, you're allowed to record conversations without the other person's consent. Know your local laws. If it's permitted, use it only when necessary for serious or repeated cases of manipulation. Take screenshots. People delete comments, edit messages. Pretend something was never said. A screenshot can become your best defense against gaslighting and revisionism. Keep timelines and logs. If you're dealing with someone who frequently shifts the story, write down what was said, when it was said, and who said it. Over time, this makes it impossible for them to alter the narrative. Now, what if they start calling you paranoid? What if they say, why don't you just trust me? Here's the truth. Only dishonest people fear documentation. If someone gets defensive the moment you suggest keeping records, that's a red flag. Honest people don't mind proof, because when you're telling the truth, records are your ally, not your enemy. I've seen people get visibly angry when they realize their own words are on file. They'll accuse you of being obsessive or controlling. But here's the real question. If they've got nothing to hide, why are they so afraid of the truth? We live in a time where reality is constantly under revision, where someone can just say, I never said that, and erase entire conversations. In this world, documentation isn't just about winning arguments, it's about protecting truth from being twisted beyond recognition. So if someone mocks you for keeping records, let them. Because the alternative is far worse, letting liars write history. Let me show you one of the most surprisingly powerful tactics you can use against manipulators: confusion. Yes, confusion, not yours, theirs. Instead of instantly defending yourself when someone twists your words, take a step back. Don't react emotionally, don't rush to explain. Instead, act like you don't understand what they're saying. Let them walk themselves into the trap they've set for you. Here's why this works so well. Manipulative people thrive on quick reactions. They count on you becoming emotional, flustered, or defensive. But when you slow things down and respond with calm, curious confusion, it throws them completely off. Suddenly, they're the ones who have to explain their logic, and that's where their whole narrative starts to crumble. Because here's the truth, most twisted logic can't survive the spotlight. When someone misrepresents your words, try saying something like, wait, I don't quite follow. How does what I said mean that? Can you walk me through how you arrived at that conclusion? I feel like I'm missing something. Can you explain the connection again? What you're doing here is subtle but brilliant. You're forcing them to say their distorted version out loud and justify it. Most of the time, they can't do that without sounding ridiculous. Their manipulation becomes transparent, not just to you, but to everyone listening. Here's a perfect example. Let's say you offer a simple suggestion in a meeting. I think we should focus on improving teamwork in the office, and someone jumps in with, so what you're saying, everyone here sucks at working together. Now, you might feel tempted to snap back or clarify, but instead, you calmly say, that's interesting. How did you get that from what I said? I thought I was just suggesting we improve collaboration. Can you explain how that turned into criticism? Now they have to do the heavy lifting. And the more they try to defend their version, the more it reveals how far off base they really are. Let me share a personal moment where this tactic worked wonders. In a team meeting years ago, I proposed a slight adjustment to how we approached project deadlines. Pretty harmless, right? But immediately, A colleague jumped in and twisted my words. So, you're saying our current system is trash and we're all incompetent? Instead of lashing out, I paused, looked at him calmly, and asked, "Oh, is that what you heard? Interesting. Can you explain how you got there?" He stumbled, he backtracked, he got visibly uncomfortable. And everyone in the room could see what was happening. That day, I learned something powerful. Acting confused can expose the truth better than any heated argument ever could. Why? Because people who twist your words are used to being in control. They expect you to fight back, to defend, to fall into their rhythm. But when you don't play their game, when you step outside the frame and act like you truly don't understand, you put all the pressure back on them. Suddenly, they're the ones being questioned. They're the ones who have to explain. And every word they say just makes it clear that their logic doesn't hold up. Confusion, when used intentionally, becomes a weapon. We live in a world that pushes us to always respond fast, to fight, to defend, to argue. But sometimes, the smartest move is to slow down, look them in the eye, and say with sincerity, "I don't understand. Can you explain that again?" Sometimes, the smartest response isn't a counter-argument or a detailed explanation. Sometimes, the smartest move is no response at all, just a well-placed question. One that gently forces the manipulator to expose themselves. And here's what manipulators hate most. 1. Having to explain their twisted version of events too much. 2. Failing to provoke a reaction from you. So, next time someone distorts your words, don't flare up. Don't raise your voice. Just pause, look puzzled, and say something like, I'm not sure I follow. Can you explain how that's what I meant?" Then watch them struggle to justify themselves, digging their own hole with every word. But there's another secret weapon in your arsenal, one that manipulators truly never see coming. Humor. Yes, humor. When someone tries to twist your words, they expect you to get irritated, defensive, or emotionally thrown off. That's what keeps them in control. But laughter, that's a curveball they can't catch. Humor is one of the most underrated weapons in communication, especially when dealing with manipulation. It instantly shifts the energy, disrupts their control, and exposes the absurdity of their tactics without you even needing to argue. Why does humor work so well? It flips the power dynamic. Laughing in the face of manipulation shows you're unshaken. It says, "I'm in control, not you." It highlights how ridiculous their distortion is. A clever, lighthearted remark can make their twisting look absurd, even childish. It wakes up the room. If you're in a group setting, your humor makes it obvious to everyone that the manipulator is reaching too far. You don't have to expose them, they do it to themselves. But remember, this isn't about laughing to avoid conflict. It's strategic humor used to disarm, not to deflect. So how do you use humor effectively? 1. Playfully exaggerate their logic. Sometimes, just taking their misrepresentation and pushing it to an extreme makes their twist laughable. I think we should improve our budgeting. Them, "Oh, so you're saying we're all irresponsible?" Absolutely. In fact, I propose we pay all our bills in Monopoly money starting next week. Just like that, their accusation falls apart under the weight of its own absurdity. 2. Use sarcasm to reverse the script. Sarcasm, when delivered with a grin, can make even their most manipulative remarks sound silly. Them, "So, you're saying you're better than everyone?" Exactly. "I'm just waiting for my superior human trophy to arrive in the mail." Delivered with confidence, it neutralizes their energy and makes the crowd laugh with you, not at you. 3. Laugh at the situation, not at the person. Target the absurdity, not the individual. Laughing at someone will trigger escalation. But laughing about the twist itself keeps it light and strategic. Them, "So, you think my ideas are stupid?" Laughing, "Wow, I didn't know I had that much influence over your thoughts. Should I also decide what you wear tomorrow?" This keeps the tone humorous but firm and clearly shows you're not playing their game. A personal experience that changed the game. I once had a coworker who loved to twist people's words in meetings. He thrived on drama, always reframing suggestions as insults. One day, during a project discussion, I made a harmless comment about trying a different method. He immediately jumped in with, "So what, you think everything we're doing is wrong?" I looked at him, paused, then smiled and said, "Oh, absolutely. I think we should just shut the whole place down and start over as a bakery." The entire room laughed. The tension broke. And just like that, his tactic fell flat. He never tried it with me again. Humor doesn't just lighten the mood, it exposes manipulation without confrontation. I remember one specific meeting that really drove this point home. That day, I offered a simple, constructive suggestion about improving our team's efficiency. Just a thought, nothing critical, nothing personal. But immediately, a colleague twisted my words. "Oh, so you're saying we're all lazy and bad at our jobs?" Now, I could have gotten defensive. I could have explained, clarified, or even snapped back. But instead, I leaned back in my chair, smiled, and said, "Then exactly. In fact, I think we should all just start taking naps under our desks from now on." Pure efficiency. The room erupted in laughter. And just like that, his attempt to manipulate the moment fell apart. Because when people laugh at a manipulator, their power vanishes. The deep message. Humor is a silent weapon. But MCC Hun. Manipulators don't just want control. They want tension. They want to provoke an emotional reaction. Their greatest trick is convincing you to take them seriously, to lock you into a battle of words where they control the flow. But humor slices through all of it. When you laugh in the face of manipulation, you show that they don't own your emotions. And when you expose the ridiculousness of their logic in a light-hearted, confident way, it opens everyone else's eyes too. Their narrative loses grip, their tactics lose power. So the next time someone tries to twist your words into a weapon, don't fight them, make them a joke. Let everyone else laugh at how absurd they sound. Now let's move to a method that's less playful but extremely effective. Answering with nothing more than a simple yes or no. You see, manipulators thrive on gray areas, on vague conversations filled with emotional explanations and extra context. The more you talk, the more material they have to twist, bend, and distort. But when you strip your responses down to the essentials, one word, clearly stated, you shut that door in their face. At first, this may feel unnatural. Most of us are conditioned to explain ourselves. We want to be understood, to soften the blow, to avoid conflict. But when dealing with manipulators, that instinct backfires. Every extra sentence becomes ammunition. So instead of engaging in emotional back and forths, just say, "Yes, no, nothing more. Why does this work so well?" It eliminates gray areas. A manipulator can twist a long answer, but they can't twist yes. It forces them to be direct. They can't bait you into long debates or emotional traps. It flips the pressure. Now they're the ones who have to explain themselves because you're not giving them anything to twist. It shows quiet confidence. When you stay calm, concise, and clear, you signal that you're not playing their game and never will. How to use it to your advantage? 1. Stop feeding their manipulation. When you respond with short, neutral answers, you leave no room for misinterpretation. The less you say, the less they can twist. 2. Shift the burden back to them. They'll want you to talk more, to say something they can manipulate. When you don't, they're stuck. They either clarify their point or back down entirely. Sometimes, silence or simplicity is the loudest message of all. Now, you might be wondering, what if they still try to escalate the situation? What if yes or no isn't enough? That's where we move to the final strategy. Setting firm, non-negotiable boundaries that protect your peace. Manipulators love arguments not for clarity, but for control. They expect long explanations. They expect emotional reactions. They expect you to defend every word you say. But the moment you stop giving them all that, the moment you respond with a quiet, firm yes or no, you shift the power. You take back control. And most importantly, you force them to carry the weight of their own intentions. Here's why this is so powerful. When you give long answers, they have content to twist. But short, closed responses force them to be explicit. They can't hide behind vague accusations anymore. They have to say exactly what they mean, and that's when their manipulation becomes visible. I've used this tactic in real life. Let me tell you how it played out. I once had a friend who was a master at baiting people into arguments. He'd ask loaded questions, twist your answers just enough to make them sound offensive, and then act shocked and hurt over things you never actually said. One day, I decided to try something different. I stopped giving explanations. I refused to engage in the dance. Instead, I replied with nothing but yes or no. And something incredible happened. He couldn't keep the argument going. He tried to twist my words, but there were no words to twist. He tried to escalate, but there was no energy to feed on. The tension deflated. The manipulation died before it could even begin. This doesn't just work in personal life, it works professionally too. Manipulative bosses, coworkers, clients, they all use the same tactics. Twisting statements, creating confusion, shifting blame. But when you respond with clear, concise language, you cut off their main supply line. You deny them ambiguity. You force them to deal with your actual words, not their distorted version. The deeper message here: stop over-explaining. It's natural to want to clarify ourselves, to make sure we are understood, to avoid conflict, to prove we're not in the wrong. But manipulators know this. They prey on it. The more you explain, the more opportunities you give them to twist your intent. Think about it. How many times have you said something, tried to explain it further, and somehow ended up looking worse? It's exhausting. So here's the shift. Instead of explaining yourself into a corner, keep your answers clean and short. Force the manipulator to be the one who carries the weight of the conversation. And if they can't handle the pressure without your help, let them fall apart on their own. The next time someone tries to twist your words, don't feed their fire. Say less. Be clear. Stay calm. Let them struggle with your silence and walk away knowing you just won the battle without even raising your voice. Now, let's take this a step further. You've learned how to limit what you say. But what about how you say it? Manipulators thrive in the fog. They twist your words by exploiting the gray areas, vague expressions, emotional phrases, loosely defined terms. But when you use precise, crystal clear language, you strip away that fog and force the truth to stand in the open. Clarity is a weapon, and if you wield it well, manipulators lose their greatest advantage. When your words are grounded in facts, not feelings, you remove the emotional bait they use to pull you into arguments. Emotional language can be reinterpreted, exaggerated, or spun into something it was never meant to be. But factual, well-defined statements leave no room for debate. No loopholes, no distortion, and best of all, you no longer have to explain yourself over and over again. When you say what you mean with clarity the first time, that's enough. How to use precise language effectively. 1. Avoid broad generalizations. Vague statements like "you always do this" or "everyone misunderstands me" are easy to twist. Instead, say, "In our last 2 conversations, you misrepresented what I said." It's specific, measurable, and leaves no room to argue about the word always. 2. Define your terms. If you're discussing something that could be interpreted in multiple ways, define your terms early. Manipulators love to shift the meaning of words mid-conversation. But when you set the definitions up front, you close that door. 3. Use short, direct sentences. Long, complex sentences give them more to twist. Instead of saying, "I feel like maybe sometimes you misunderstand my words," say, "You misquoted me just now." That's unambiguous and powerful. 4. Rephrase their distortion immediately. When someone twists your words, don't get dragged into their version of events. Pause, then say, "No, that's not what I said. What I said was." Bring the focus back to your actual words. Don't let them rewrite your meaning. 5. Use written communication when needed. If you're dealing with someone who consistently manipulates your words, communicate in writing. Text, email, chat logs, something you can refer back to. In professional or legal settings, this isn't just smart, it's essential. Your clarity becomes your evidence. Let me give you a real-world example of how this works. I had a coworker who loved to twist people's words. If you made a simple suggestion, he'd reframe it as a demand. If you expressed a concern, he'd treat it like a personal attack. One day, during a team meeting, I commented that we might need to adjust a project timeline. He immediately jumped in with, "So you think we're all incompetent and can't meet deadlines?" I didn't flinch. I didn't raise my voice. I just looked him in the eye and said, "No. What I said was that we need 2 extra days to complete the task properly." That's a factual observation, not a judgment of anyone's abilities. Boom. His manipulation collapsed right there. The meeting moved on. And after that, he never tried that move on me again. The deeper message: precision is power. Manipulators weaponize ambiguity, but clarity is your shield. Most arguments don't spiral out of control because of what was actually said. They spiral because words get twisted, reinterpreted, and distorted. But when you remove all the gray areas, when your words are sharp, intentional, and direct, there's nowhere for manipulation to hide. Being precise doesn't mean being robotic. It means being in control. It means choosing your words with care, owning your meaning, and refusing to let someone else redefine your truth. So the next time someone tries to twist your words, don't give them any loose threads to pull on. Be clear, be specific, and watch their manipulation fall apart under the weight of your clarity. But what if none of this works? What if the person you're dealing with simply refuses to stop twisting your words, no matter how clear or calm you are? There's a harsh truth that many people struggle to accept. Not everyone can be reasoned with. You might assume that if you just explain yourself better, speak more calmly, or clarify your words one more time, they'll finally get it. That they'll finally stop twisting your words and engage in honest dialogue. But some people aren't looking for resolution. They're looking for control. They don't want understanding. They want to dominate the conversation, manipulate your emotions, and win no matter what it costs. Why can't some people be reasoned with? They thrive on conflict. For them, arguments are fuel. They don't want peace, they want drama. They feed off emotional chaos and the power it gives them over others. They need to be right. Admitting they misunderstood you, or worse, misrepresented you, would mean losing face. They'd rather twist the truth than lose the upper hand. They use manipulation as a weapon. Twisting your words isn't a mistake, it's a tactic. It keeps you defensive, distracted, and off balance. They refuse accountability. Acknowledging your actual words would mean facing their own flaws. They'd rather shift the narrative than own up how to recognize them. They ignore your clarifications. No matter how many times you restate yourself, they act like they didn't hear it and keep twisting your words. They move the goalposts. If you prove them wrong, they change the subject or redefine the argument to keep control. They gaslight you. They act like you're the one twisting things. You start doubting your memory, your perception, even your sanity. They create a never-ending loop. No matter how clearly you explain, the conversation always circles back to the same distorted points. At some point, you need to face the truth. You're not in a real conversation anymore. You're caught in a psychological tug-of-war with someone who never intended to play fair. And that's when the most powerful move becomes clear: walk away. This is what most people struggle with. We're taught that walking away means losing, but it doesn't. Staying in a toxic loop, trying to win a game that was rigged from the start, that's the real loss. You don't owe anyone endless explanations. Especially not someone who has proven time and again that they're twisting your words on purpose. By walking away, you deny them the reaction and the control they crave. And that's how you win. Let me share a moment from my own life. I once found myself in a conversation with someone who twisted everything I said. If I made a simple observation, it became an insult. If I tried to clarify, I was backtracking. If I asked them what they heard, they changed the subject. No matter what I did, it kept spiraling. At first, I tried to fix it. I explained, I repeated, I rephrased, I tried to be reasonable, but it didn't matter because they weren't looking for clarity. They were looking for control. And when I finally stopped responding, when I let them say whatever they wanted and simply moved on, they lost all their power over me. The deeper message: protect your energy. Not every battle is worth fighting. Not every argument is worth winning. Some people use words like weapons to drain you, trigger you, and trap you in their emotional maze. But once you recognize that, you take back control, not by fighting harder, but by choosing not to fight at all. Being right isn't the goal, protecting your peace is. So next time someone twists your words and refuses to be honest, let them keep talking. Let them argue with a version of you that doesn't exist. You've got better things to do than fight a battle that was never meant to be fair. Because at the end of the day, manipulators twist words for one reason: control. Control over the conversation, control over your emotions, and sometimes even control over how others perceive you. But now, you know better. You know how to respond with clarity, calmness, and courage. You know when to call it out, when to stay silent, and when to simply walk away. And remember, you don't have to prove yourself to someone who is committed to misunderstanding you. You don't have to argue with someone who's only interested in twisting your truth. Some battles aren't worth fighting. Some people aren't worth reasoning with. The most powerful thing you can do: stay clear, stay firm, and when needed, walk away. Because when you refuse to play their game, you win every time.